Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, but um, the idea that the way you choose to react the way that you react. So you have a certain amount of control over how you react to statements that offend you and statements that hurt your feelings. Yes, words hurt. Yes, words can cause some psychological damage, but when we were growing up, it was always sticks and stones, maybe like my bones, but words can never hurt me. And somewhere along the way, we've kind of lost that. And I was thinking recently about how, this, we're sort of mostly Gen X, and we were raised kind of in this feral way. And so, we're kind of like Teflon with a lot of things. And then we've turned around and raised our kids to be very, very overly protected, to sort of counterbalance the way we grew up, I think. And we've overcorrected in a lot of ways. And so obviously we can't do anything about the way the kids have been raised now, but we can help steer them in the classroom.
Well, I think it also gets back to the search for truth, right? I mean, if you go back to the purpose of the university, and this is where I think we have to move the university back to, because I think we've gotten off of that path, as Jonathan has pointed out, with the, what's the telos of the university. And if you go back to this, we are in a pursuit of truth or searching for truth, then everything should be on the table that we can debate whether, what these different things mean, and how do we, we're all searching for truth, and that we should hold our beliefs, fairly lightly. And so when people, I think there was a comment by Ursula in the chat about, it's about ideology and propaganda. It's like, I think we can't just accept the narratives of and the assumptions behind some of the ideologies. And I think we have to be willing to test those in class and in conversations with students. And to do that, obviously you've got to feel fairly comfortable that your university is going to back you up. And I think that's a whole nother problem with universities, is that a lot of professors realize that they're going to be hung out to dry if they make any mistake. And secondly, I think the data that we found at UNC, and the data you see from FIRE, is that students are willing to report other students, and students are willing to report professors trying to get them fired. And so, yeah, I mean, if you don't have my back, Ms. Administrator, yeah, I'm just gonna self-censor myself in class. As a professor, I mean.
Roslyn, did you want to get in on that one? I think you're on mute right now.
I actually agree with Mark on that point, and I'm really interested. I'm following the Q&A in the chat, and I really think Jacqueline really hit the nail on the head in her discussion of sort of safety and limitations and things like that. And so I would certainly encourage everyone to read what she had to say there. But I really want to interrogate one of the questions I see here in the Q&A about this notion, the unwillingness to be uncomfortable as a result of our really going more vocational, right? College is a means of getting a job, and you've got to get ready for the workforce. And this is really all about learning a trade or a skill, or learning to go get a job. That stunts this intellectual growth argument, the real purpose of a college or university. I think that's a really interesting observation, and it merits some interrogation. I think that's part of the challenge. I would agree with whoever submitted that comment. And I might suggest that employers desperately will need, in this increasingly polarized world, individuals who can listen, hear, receive, challenge, interrogate, respond, and critically analyze ideas, thoughts, and still get the work done. I think that is absolutely invaluable. And I think, again, the observer here is absolutely correct that part of this shift in focus away from the search for truth, new ideas, new knowledge, creativity, and critical thinking toward a more vocational approach to education is absolutely part of the problem, but should likewise be part of the solution. Employers have an interest here in seeing to it that individuals can think critically and contribute in a meaningful way to civic society.
I sometimes wonder about those who are not enrolling in college because of perceptions about some of these issues. We've started to see some poll data and enrollment data that suggests there's maybe a silent constituency out there saying we're going to pass on this altogether. Couple of comments from the chat I'd like to share. Anthony shares, and hi Anthony, thanks for joining us, another campus community co-chair. He says, as a sociologist, I've been trained to appreciate the fact that a modern society is characterized by plurality. Hannah Arendt emphasized this as well. We seem to have gone from valuing plurality to privileging uniformity. That's not what a modern society is supposed to be all about. So I will leave that out there. And then I will also, there was a good question from Emily, just as we're talking about the rhetoric on this issue. She says, even if students don't believe speech is harm, many argue against free speech by telling controversial speakers that, quote unquote, speech has consequences. It certainly is a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, if the consequence is that I'm not going to let you talk. But is there something there that we need to be grappling with?
I think the thing that I would say is that speech has some consequences. That doesn't mean you can decide what those consequences are. So your consequences, if you're a speaker, speaking and have been invited, as a protester, I can't force the consequences on you of shouting you down. And if you try to do that, then there will be consequences for you, right? I mean, this is the problem. There's never any consequences for those that do that. So it's like, yeah, there's, if you want to do some speech that's not actually allowed speech, there's going to be consequences, right? So I think we have to make clear, like, yes, some consequences, like you can walk out, right? You cannot go. You can ask difficult questions, but you can't do a heckler's veto. So yes, some consequences are allowed and some consequences are not. And then how you comport yourself also has consequences.
Well, I think if the assertion that speech has consequences is designed as a warning to stifle speech, then we've really gone too far in the opposite direction, right? Of course, hate speech has consequences, but all free speech might elicit a response, not a consequence, right? I think the use of that verbiage is really almost a threat, and that goes against everything we believe in.